Welcome, everybody. First item on our agenda is something unique. A lot of board presidents don't get to do this over their career, but it will be my pleasure to give the public officer's oath to our new board clerk, Sharon Erkwitz. And if you will stand, and I will give you that oath of office. Repeat after me. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution
of the United States of America
of the United States of America
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of District Clerk
and I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of District Clerk
in the Penfield Central School District according to the best of my ability.
in the Penfield Central School District according to the best of my ability.
Very good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome. Welcome, and we'll try not to be too hard on you over the years,
Okay.
like the superintendent is here. If I could have a motion and a second that the agenda of August 9th, 2016 be approved as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. If I could have a motion that we approve the consent agenda of the following items that are listed on there.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions on the consent agenda? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Okay. We have a treasurer's report that you had in your packet for the month ending June 30th, 2016. If I could have a motion and a second that the treasurer's report, including the cash report, general fund cash report, general fund revenue status report, general fund budget status report, school lunch fund cash report, school lunch fund revenue, and expense budget report for the month ending June 30th, 2016 be approved.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. We have no special reports, but we do have a textbook introduction. I'm going to let Dr. Putnam take this piece.
Great. Yeah, so this evening we have Mr. Brian Bricko with us, and I'll have Brian come up, and Nicole Whitehead as well. And Brian is our department chair for K-12 music, and Nicole Whitehead is our director of STEAM, and are here to introduce two textbooks. And I will turn it over to them since I was told by my parents in fourth grade I could no longer play the trumpet. You can probably talk much better about music textbooks.
Thank you, Dr. Putnam.
Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me in today. It's my pleasure to be here to talk to you about some exciting things that we have going on in the music department for the coming school year. So we have a new course. It's popular music, and I have to say right up front that I'm jealous because I actually wish that I could be taking this course. We did some curriculum work over the summer, and I'd like to thank you all for making that possible. The curriculum is just outstanding. Dr. Julie Beauregard has done a great job with it, and it looks like it's going to be a great time for the students. There are two textbooks that we're hoping to secure for this course. And the course really has three components that are the main focus of it. There's a historical music history aspect to it. There is a business of music aspect to it, and there is a creative portion, a songcraft portion to it. So students are going to be composing their own pieces of music based on popular composition techniques. So that's one of the books that we're going to talk about. I want to start talking about this textbook that is relatively new. It was first published in 2006, and it's had a fresh update in 2015, just last year, and this is the fourth edition of this book. It's called What's That Sound? An Introduction to Rock and Its History. And this is really the meat and potatoes of this historical portion of this course. It's going to really be getting the students thinking about the music starting in the 1950s to present day. And this really is kind of the book that's leading the way in that popular music study of what is contemporary music. And I really must say, if I can just kind of put another plug in for the music department, we're really on the cutting edge as far as a high school that's going to be offering a course of this nature, a popular music course. We're one of the few high schools in the area to be doing so. So this book also touches on some of the technology aspects of music, recording, the music business, and a little bit of the theory behind modern music as well. So that's what's that sound. The other book that we're hoping to get is called Chord Progressions for Songwriters, and the book is exactly as it sounds. This is the book that's really going to be helping the students understand what it takes to compose and create songs based on contemporary chord structure and contemporary music theory. So, and the neat thing about this book, we considered so many books when we were going through this process, and these two, of course, were the standouts. The nice thing about this Chord Progressions for Songwriters, it's just so many options for what you can do for songwriting that we're going to have. I think we're really at our cap for what this course is offering, and for student enrollment, and so many options that each student could potentially walk away from this course creating their very own unique composition, and even learning the same techniques out of this book. They could all walk away having a totally unique composition in their own right. So we're very, very excited about this course.
And I'd just like to add that there is also web-based digital media packages available for the What's That Sound, which is great for our students. And there's lots of examples, and they touch upon prerequisite skills that students have to have, which is great, and that they're both highly engaging. So we definitely support both of those, the use of both of those in this new course, exciting course.
Okay. Board members, any questions? Sounds like a great opportunity, as are all of our courses, and especially the digital piece as well. Carol?
Can you just refresh my memory, because I'm forgetting a lot these days? So this is a new course, and we have students enrolled in it already.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so will we have time to order the books? And
We'll be close. We'll be able to start the course, and get things going, and then the idea is that we'll have the books as soon as possible.
okay, all right, thank you.
And a lot of great work, I have to say. Kudos to your department for the curriculum writing that was done. It was done using the UBD format that I'm sure we'll be talking about later on, about some of the work that was done, and they really embraced it. The entire department did, and it's really good work.
Great.
So.
Yeah, we're very, very proud of it.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Lisa.
I was just curious, can anyone take this course, or do they have to have a lot of music background?
This course, yeah, it's a great question. This course is intended for 10 through 12th graders. So there are some prerequisites. So a student should have either taken a year of music in our lives, so a 9th grade freshman classroom music course. They could possibly also get into this course by way of a performing ensemble.
Great.
We're in.
You could probably
We'll save you a seat, Lisa.
Yes.
You could audit that, as
Yes,
we
you
say.
sure can.
Okay, any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much. It sounds exciting. We're glad we had the opportunity to hear about it.
Thanks again.
Thank
I'll leave
you.
copies of the book back
Great.
on the table if you'd like to peruse them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, this is visitor speaking time. Time is provided within our agenda for residents to bring concerns and comments to the board. Comments should not be related to any particular individual or specifics of negotiations, since it is not proper for the board to discuss these issues in public session. Request to speak comment form must be filled out and handed to the district clerk at any time now or before the meeting. It is expected the speakers will limit their comments to 5 minutes or less, and the board reserves the right to limit the total amount of time spent on the comment period in order to keep our agenda in place. Written communication to the board is also encouraged as well. And also, if there is any response by the board, that would be done through the superintendent, usually in writing. Did we have anyone sign up?
I don't have anyone, no.
Okay. No one here to speak. Okay. We'll move on to superintendent's reports. Dr. Putnam.
Thank you. This evening, we are going to do our traditional student and staff honors, and we have Mr. Joe Argento here for our school lunch report, where then Dr. Sansucci will refer to refunding. Pausing?
Yes, I just was reminded by Dr. Pfeiffer
Yes.
that we have in the audience, almost Dr. Pfeiffer, our student representative was sitting in and isn't expected to be here till September, but you can tell the enthusiasm that is shown by Ms. Nazarian, and we appreciate you coming to watch and observe, and then in September you'll be sitting right up here in the middle of us. So again, congratulations to you, and we'll also give you formal congratulations again in September. And I think this is the first time we've had anybody come ahead of time in August
No, her parents.
as a representative of the group. So thank you again, and thank you, Mr. Pfeiffer, for reminding me of that. So, okay.
Just to piggyback on that, thank you. And when school starts, I'll stop over and answer any questions you have to on your role and what you need to do and what we can do to help you out. Okay? That's wonderful. Awesome. I can think of 10 other things I want to do, but I'm really impressed you're here. So that's great. So just we'll turn over to Dr. Sansucci to go over refunding of bonds, tax rates for this upcoming school year. And then back to Mr. Pfeiffer. We just received a couple weeks ago, about a week and a half ago, the New York State 3 through 8 assessment results. And so this is our preliminary review and overview for the board and the public on what we found, as well as a quick update on the Leadership Summit, which is the leadership meeting that we have in the summer. We bring the leaders from across the district together, both administrators and teacher leaders, and the board joined us for breakfast one morning as well. And then the APPR and CTLE update, which we've, for the last few years, APPR have talked about, never with too much excitement in our voice, but we felt it was important that we update the board on the changes, and Mr. Pfeiffer will do that. So just a couple of staff and student honors. One is, first of all, I just want to say thank you to Nancy Bradstreet, who's in the audience, who thanks to social media, my student and staff honors sometimes are after the fact because it's already been all over Facebook. And this one is really exciting, that Penfield High School teacher Shane Watterson has been selected to receive the Inspiration Teacher Award given by the University of Rochester Laboratory for Laser Engineerics. 2 PHS students who attended the 2015 high school program at the LEE nominated Mrs. Watterson for the award. Congratulations to Shane. And so if you do go to our Facebook page, the district Facebook page, you can go and see that and Shane's picture and just the dozens of positive comments from current and former students and parents, colleagues from all around. And it really is an amazing award. And having been in and observed Shane's chemistry class, they picked a great person for that award. Over 4th of July, the annual Penfield 4th of July parade, Independence Day parade took place, and I just received on Monday this lovely thank you card to Dr. Sansucci and I, but I want to also share that with the entire board. This is from the Transportation Office thanking us for for supporting them in the parade. The high school, or sorry, the district Transportation Office has a couple buses and marches in the parade every year. Once again, this year, that just in case kindergartners are watching it, that is not what our bus drivers look like. But it is pretty exciting. And so I just thought it was a nice thank you, and I thought I wanted to share it with the board and the community as a great honor that our transportation department does that. It's not an expectation, but they appreciate being part of the Independence Day parade. And I don't have a slide for it, but this evening prior to coming over to the board meeting, I was at Cobbles Elementary School for our first of 2 evenings referred to as Strive for 5. Mr. Argento was there presenting to all the new incoming kindergartners and their parents the school lunch program. And then they get on buses and drive over to Harris Hill to learn the 5 main keys of bus safety. And so it's really exciting to be in a room when I asked, the vast majority of parents were first-time parents of kindergarten students. And the kids were really, really excited. And I'll be there tomorrow night, too. Invite the board if anybody's interested. It'll be at Cobbles again, Mr. Argento, tomorrow. Yeah, at 5:30. Starts at 5:30 and has some time at Cobbles, and then the kids ride a bus, many of them for the very first time, to Harris Hill with their parents. And having done it twice with my 2 who are now in 3rd and 4th grade, it really is exciting for the kids and sometimes really sad for the parents to think about them growing up. But again, it was a great night. And I'll actually now turn it over to Mr. Joe Argento. If you could come on up. He's going to walk us through our annual update on the school lunch program.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity. I do enjoy being here. And thank you, Dr. Putnam, for attending tonight. If anybody does come tomorrow night, get there early because it's a full house. School lunch, we had a pretty good year this year. As every year, we sit down and look at the actuals, revenue and expenses, and like to use those numbers in putting together our budget. We did that last year, and I think we had a good budget going into the school year. I think we're going to have another good one going into this school year. Our students are starting to learn what to expect when they come into the cafeteria. I think that's starting to show in our participation and what they anticipate to see. The whole grain, the healthy nutrition changes that we've made. You look at the generations that have been impacted through that. You got the new ones coming in, they don't know what they missed. But you have the ones that felt that maybe, what are all these healthy changes? But so there's really no more surprises for these generations as they come through. With that, I think that's helping keep our lunch sales on target. We saw an increase this year at breakfast. We do see a steady increase in other sales. So those that don't want breakfast or lunch or that want to purchase a snack or something like that, we do see a lot of participation in other sales, which is good for the program overall. 15-16 budget, the revenue and expenditures, they were very realistic to what we had budgeted. The only major expenditure that was impacted this year, the minimum wage affected us a little bit more than we initially had anticipated, and you'll see that that's going to reoccur as we go forward. We had anticipated 292,000 meals to be sold, and we came in just shy of that, 291,695. We used an ADP, daily participation of 1668. And we were one off from that at 1667. So very realistic, and the participation was there. This was also the first year that we didn't service Charles Finney, and that's when you look years to years why our numbers may decline a little bit overall, is because we won't be servicing them as we go forward. Outcomes. This year, going into the school year, we had to reduce our general fund a little bit. That's because of success we've had in prior years. In order to do that, and we're going to reduce that $94,000, we do that through purchasing equipment and lowering the general fund transfer that comes into the program every year. Going into this budget year, we also we didn't purchase as much food as we thought. Coming into the school year at the time, there was a crisis with USDA and poultry. We weren't sure if eggs, turkey, and some of them items were going to be available, and they weren't. We did have to purchase them, but not quite to the levels that we had budgeted, which was okay. We were still able to use the majority of our USDA allotment. A lot of that purchasing was done on other commodities and through the pilot program where we were able to purchase fruits and vegetables from a local New York State farm or a source. And we're going to continue continue to do that going forward. Not all of the equipment that we had ordered made it into this budget. Some of the equipment came in damaged twice to the rep, and they had to refuse it. Eventually, it came in towards the tail end of the summer. We got it installed and got it implemented, but we will be carrying over some of that expense into this budget year, and there's going to be a small impact there, $54,000. So going forward, we're going to anticipate really a similar school year. We're going to go 292,000 meals. We're going to 1668 for our ADP. I just think that's a nice conservative. We see conservative participation, and we're gonna plan on that again. We're going to have provisions for child nutrition. They're going to be implemented again this year. That's going to continue. We're going to be decreasing sodium another 5%. That's been happening steadily. We have professional development standards where there's going to be an increase in the amount of hours of continuing development. We're also going to have an administrative review that's going to be conducted. These are done by the state ed office every 3 years. They're going to come in, they're going to look at our procurement practices, our menu compliance. They're going to look at our free and reduced lunch application process, and then do an overall nutritional analysis to make sure that we're meeting all of our standards. And then they are telling us that after this year, they're going to go to they'll do this every 5 years. So, but we're due to be done this year, and that'll probably be taking place sometime late in the fall. The provisions this year we're going to see an increase in the amount of training. My level, 4 hours, and other managers, our managers, 4 hours. Other staff is going to go up 2 hours. So we're going to build in another day of training. So let's have a little impact on our labor costs this year. But we usually do this training at the beginning of the school year, and it'll be done customer service and understanding meal compliance this year. Did I double click again? Oh, okay. Minimum wage. Feel this is necessary to talk about because it's going to go up 70 cents an hour this year. We didn't quite anticipate for all that in last year's budget, and we're definitely going to be including it in this year's, and it's going to be happening right up to 2020. And this significantly impacts our program. And it's going to definitely be something that we're going to be feeling for the next few more years. But we're a little more prepared for it this year. Budgeted meals obviously is going to stay the same in ADP. Our cooperative bids didn't see much of an increase, just as a slight increase. Benefits is only going to go up a little bit this year. Don't know if that trend's going to stay the same. We might have to address that in the future. Materials and supplies, only slight increase there. And then employee labor is going to increase significantly this year due to the minimum wage and the staff development, both which are mandatory. So in building the budget on the revenue side, we're going to need to propose some increases this year. At lunch, we're looking to go up 15 cents to $2.65. Going to keep reduced price lunch and reduced price breakfast at 0, because we see that participation in free and reduced is pretty good, and 44% at breakfast is from free and reduced, and 25% of our meals at lunch is from free and reduced. So we get good participation from that group, and we're going to leave that the same. And breakfast, we're going to increase 10 cents to $1.35. When you compare our program to other surrounding districts, we'll remain the lowest at breakfast, and in the middle of the pack at lunch, and low at equal or low for extra milk. So we're a good deal here in Penfield. Questions?
Board members, questions, board members. Catherine.
Hello.
Hello.
Are you still seeing the amount of waste that you have, with the fruit that they have to take and all that, is that still an issue?
Yeah, it's still there.
Yeah.
Not, it's mandatory that they take a fruit and vegetable component at breakfast and at lunch. It's a cost. It's unfortunately, we've built that into our pricing, and that's there. And I'm hoping throughout the years the kids will utilize that fruit and vegetable and eat
Or
it.
maybe
and
just
consume
take it home and eat it later.
Or take it home,
something.
eat it later.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it is still there.
Okay, and I do have one more question, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
Do you anticipate the cost of lunches to continue to rise because of that minimum wage?
I think it's going to be something that I do. I think that's going to definitely have a major impact on that expenditure. If participation increases, that always helps on the revenue side. So as long as participation can stay the same or increase, we may be able to offset that a little bit. But if it goes down, then that's obviously going to
Yeah,
have an impact.
okay, thank you.
Camille?
Do we still participate in the meal pay program so that people can ahead of time purchase their meals for the students and they swipe them or something? And is that a major cost? And what kind of percentage participation do we have in the meal pay program?
We'll still be using My Payments Plus, and it's I think participation right now is like hovering around 70%. So 70% of our families are utilizing that. The cost of it I really don't know an exact cost. I know there's a cost to the users which we don't
Right.
collect, or that's all part of the third party. But parents can prepay with cash or check right to the cashier free of charge, and they can still use that system. They don't have to make a payment on it, and we're trying to get that. I try and get that information out tonight at the Strive for Five. It's on our website. Using the online payment, it's an option for you. You can still track purchases. You can still register on the site, and if you don't want to use that to prepay, you can just prepay through your school, and it's free of charge.
Okay, any other questions? Great
I
questions.
just have one. So I'm going to publicly do it because I ask every year, do the changes from the government impact chocolate milk and grilled bagels?
We will still have chocolate milk and strawberry milk. Thank you to you and Frankie Gissendanner.
That's great.
And we will have the grilled bagels, and
Right.
we will have grilled cheese.
That was coming.
I know.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay.
Very good.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you to my staff for
Thank
everything
you.
they do, and the board, and Mark, and everyone else's help. I draw it up, and they make it work, so thank you to everybody. Thank you.
It's probably a good idea when we do our tours. We haven't had lunch at a school in a while, and we would certainly pay, but maybe that's an idea. We could have lunch at one of the schools and have grilled cheese or
I'm in.
chocolate milk.
Grilled cheese and strawberry milk?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe we'll try and work that out when we
I like that.
do our tours in the fall, which will be starting in October. So we'll find a date where we can have lunch at one of the schools. Great.
All right. Thank you. I'll turn it over to Dr. Sansucci.
Thank you. There's later in the agenda, quite a long agenda item on that has to do with refinancing or refunding some of our outstanding debt. So Penfield generally has a very low percentage of debt compared to the size of our budget. But we do have some. We have $28 million, about $28 million, $275,000 outstanding from the $73 million capital project. And we issued that debt in 2009 and 10. The interest rate is obviously different now. It's a different financial environment than it was in 9 and 10. So the current average interest rate on those outstanding bonds is almost 4%, 3.9%. They're not callable till 2019-20. It's hard to say, but And by callable, what that means is when you issue the bond, the bond holders want to know how long they're going to be able to hold it for, so that you're not going to pay it off early, if you will, because they're enjoying that 4% earnings on those bonds, and they want, when they buy it, some reasonable assurance that they'll be able to enjoy that into the future. So usually it depends on the market and the timing and what the market will bear. But our bonds, which go to 2024 or 5, are not callable until the last few years of them. It is possible, however, for us to pre-fund them, essentially borrowing money at today's low interest rates, pre-fund the remaining couple of years of those payments, and then pay them off the minute they become callable. So by doing that, we're able to lock in today's low interest rates, put that money into escrow, into a formal escrow account, and pay the debt until it becomes callable, and pay it off at that time. The advantage of doing that over waiting until they're callable and maybe refinancing at that point or paying them off is that you lock in today's rate. And I had a meeting today where I was assured by a bank regulator, interest rates will go up. We just don't know when. However, they are very low right now, and I think in the conversations that we've had with Bernie Donegan, with our financial advisor, he would estimate that at the sale of these bonds, we would end up with rates around 1.8%, which is quite a bit different than the 4%. We would also take advantage then of that opportunity to prepay some of that. We can choose to do that now. And we've identified in a previous board meeting 2 sources, $1 million from our debt service reserve and $1 million worth of fund balance. Essentially, when you do that, we reduce both the principal and we reduce the principal, and with the interest savings, it will generate over the course of the remaining life of the bonds. And you have some backup documentation in your packet about a $3 million budget savings over time. There's no change in the term of the bonds, so our new bonds would have the same term as the old bonds. If we didn't prepay, there'd still be savings just based on the interest breakage of about $835,000. So we recommend that we take advantage of this opportunity. Tonight's agenda item would implement that. It authorizes, there's a number of things that are contained in that resolution. So it authorizes the issuance and sale of the refunding bonds. We don't know what those final interest rates are yet because they're not sold. That'll happen when we go to the market. There'll be that moment where we'll have to make a final decision based upon what that sale price is. So the resolution also delegates signature authority to the board, president and vice president. We'll have that conversation with the financial advisor, with bond counsel, and if it's significantly different than what we project, we might not move forward. But the anticipation is that we will, that the interest rates will come in at or below what we're projecting, that the savings that we're projecting will be achievable, and if that's the case, we'll move forward. The other important thing the resolution does is it pledges the district's full faith and credit to the repayment of the new bonds. So whenever we go out in public and based on a financing plan for a capital project issue bonds, one of the things the board does is that pledge of full faith and credit. It means legally that the repayment of that debt is your first priority. It comes first in all the things that we choose to do, instructional program and whatever. We pledge the full faith and credit of the school district to that repayment, and this resolution does that. And it also establishes formally the escrow account for the repayment of the existing debt until it can be called. So that's the nuts and bolts. There's some more detailed attachments in your packet that have to do with, shows the existing debt, what this debt schedule payment would be some more details, but really, this is the summary of that. Are there any questions? Is there anything that I can help with?
Board members, you have detailed information in your packets. Any questions? Mark?
Just a question. You talked about the call date, 2019, 2020.
Yes.
With this refinancing to a lower rate, would that affect our strategy on whether or not to call the bonds early or let them run out?
Yeah, we're going to lose the opportunity to call because they essentially call, we're calling them now, if you will, is a different way to say it. We're making a choice to pay off 2 million of them early, but these bonds will have a life. There may be a call date, but it will be minuscule, and so it'll extend through 2020, through the tail end of the bond period, which I think is 2025.
I'm sorry, to hit the last part.
Which I think is 2025. So we are giving up that ability to call them in a few years and repay at that point. But in the meantime, we achieve the interest rate and budget savings. So we looked it over and decided that makes sense. The other challenge that comes along with calling them, because we had this conversation as well, is one of the things that we're really trying to pay attention to is the matching of the revenue, because remember, because of the way New York State changed their repayment, and their state aid on these projects, and that state aid is now, it used to be attached to the payment of the bond. So you pay the bond, you got the state aid, and they were linked together. That's been disassociated. And so one of the things we're trying to pay very careful attention to in a tax cap environment is making sure that we manage that level of either good or ill to our budget. So if we were to pay off those bonds and the debt falls off, now we have no expense. The revenue will continue. If we build that revenue of several $1 million into our budget, when it runs out, we've got a significant problem. So the tax cap continues to change things, and it continues to change our way we think about things. We now need to carefully manage to make sure that we have a debt load that matches our revenue stream. We're positive. We are currently positive on that. We're positive to the tune of about $1.2 million. I think we're comfortable with that. That's a good thing. We wouldn't want to see that end. This will increase that a little bit out into the future, but we'll have to plan on other projects to come in to maintain our buildings and also manage that debt load. So that was some of the thinking that went into the idea that we just, that while calling is appealing because it feels like we're burning the mortgage and it's all done, it's probably not something we would want to entertain, unless we had another big project to put in and fit up against it. So. And that seems risky.
Thanks.
Any other questions at all? Lisa?
I'm gonna go back to my newbiness, because I've never done this bond thing, so just want to make sure I understand what's going on here. If they're not callable, is there a penalty?
Yeah, essentially, there's not a penalty,
Okay.
but essentially what we're doing here in this resolution, if you read the resolution itself, we'll be borrowing a little bit more than the total amount necessary for the outstanding bonds, because in those interim years, the escrow will be making the bond payments for us because they're not callable yet. We'll be paying interest on those bonds, and while we're still making the payment on the outstanding bonds, and they're not called, and they're not callable yet. The reason that we would do that, because there's an interest penalty to that. We're paying interest, right? We're making the escrow will be making the debt service payment for us that includes the 4% interest, plus potentially a 1.8 penalty, if you will. It's not a penalty, but we're paying that because we borrowed the money to make those payments. So we do have that penalty, if you will. Why would we do that? We do that because it locks in today's interest rate. And when you do the analysis, there's a piece of your analysis that says negative arbitrage. That means, arbitrage is money we earn on money we borrow. for those first couple of years of this, it's actually negative. But then we pay it off. We've got today's locked-in interest rate, and the difference between that makes it, and also the additional money, makes it positive to the tune of the $3 million worth of budget savings. Does that make sense?
Yes, that helps me. So when this becomes callable, that escrow then pays off all
Well,
the-
just, one of the things in here, it says when it's callable, it
It's
pays
done.
off, and it's
Okay.
done. And then we're left with the
With the new
money
ones.
the bonds
Okay.
we issued to fund the escrow.
I get it now. That helps me. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
I should also mention, because this is complicated, that it's not, that besides the, we've, obviously bond counsel is part of this. We've had that looked over by our bond counsel, Bernie Donegan's, the board's financial advisor is part of this. But ultimately, on the day of sale, the final approval of this is given by the New York State Comptroller. So they review the entire financing plan, and they make an they really have final say as to whether this moves forward, because they're acting to make sure that everything's done in the best interest of the taxpayer and of the state of New York. So whereas when we just issue bonds, they're on the, essentially that's the board's resolution, and it's and voter approved. So there's no comptroller oversight to this. Because this arrangement's done midstream, if you will, they want to ensure that everything's appropriate, so they sign off at the 11th hour.
Okay, well, I think the market volatility lends itself to this type of thing, according to experts. So I think, and again, the gatekeepers that we utilize to check upon check, makes it worthwhile. So I know we haven't done this in a while, and it is complex, but it definitely is a positive thing for us. So thanks, Mark.
Thank you. Next is tax rates and our year-end performance for the year. So you've seen this before. The numbers are a little bit different, but not completely. We had estimated previously at the June meeting that we would end the year about net of operations about $3 million positive. We're about $900,000 or so shy of that, so we came in less than we thought, but still very much within the realm of reason. This includes an assigned fund balance for the reduction of taxes in the 16-17 year of $2 million. We maintain our 4% unassigned fund balance, and you see all the other transactions through the course of the year that got us to that point. Whoops, I'm sorry. In terms of the summary, the board reviewed this and made decisions at the June meeting based on those preliminary numbers. I always have to say these are still sort of preliminary. The auditors are in today. They're in this week. They'll continue to do their work, and if there are any adjusting entries, we would get them in the next several weeks, and we would make adjustments at closing. Those will not be significant, but they're possible. So, we start out with our estimate. It gets much, much better tonight, and there still can be a little bit of tweaking after this. But what we propose is that we maintain our unassigned fund balance at the 4% that's recommended by our auditor and allowed by law. We reduce taxes, so we use $2 million of this as revenue in the next year for reduction of taxes. That's what we estimated in our budget, and so we would want to fulfill that commitment. We just talked about the $1 million that we would like to use of fund balance to reduce our outstanding debt. We need to adjust a reserve by $800. So this is the reserve based on our commitment to retirement benefits for certain units. It just has to total the outstanding obligation, and that changes by that little amount. That leaves really $1.1 million to fund our capital reserve, which remains necessary funding to be completely funded of about $2 million. So we continue to chip away at that as we move forward. That final bullet then really is that any remaining funds, as we adjust, if there's those small, several $1,000 adjustment items, we make them either positively or negatively against that capital reserve transfer. This is the summary then of those decisions, $2 million of appropriated to reduce taxes. That leaves a levy of $60,523,391 and our 4% undesignated fund balance of about $3.7 million. In terms of tax rates for 16-17, this is really for people, I think, the bottom line. Taxes will decrease slightly in all of our towns with the exception of Brighton. Its equalization rate continues to drop, and as the rate drops, it drives up the rate in that town. This compares positively to what we promised or what we estimated in the budget newsletter. So in all of our towns in the budget newsletter, for example, in Penfield, I think we estimated an increase of about 0.3, I think, so a slight increase. So really, I think in Penfield, it's about 0.4%, almost 0.5% better than what we'd indicated in our budget. So certainly that's, I think, good. That's really the summary of the tax rate resolution. You see there's also more detail in your budget and lots more discussion, but I'd be happy to take any questions about that.
Board members? You have detailed information in your packets that we've read. Okay. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Ready for I'll turn it over to Jim Piper, who is going to give us first of a couple presentations, but this one is around our New York State 3 through 8 ELA math and science assessment results that were, as I mentioned earlier, just recently released, and Jim's put a lot of work in over the last week and a half doing some comparisons as well to area schools in our past 3 years, and so I'll turn it over to Jim.
I know that's why the board didn't ask any questions about the tax information that Mark just shared, because they're eager to get onto the presentation about our 3 through 8 assessment results. I think it is important to note for the board and for the public, we are a full month earlier on this report than we were last year. And we will certainly not hesitate to criticize the state education department when we don't agree with things that they've done, but under the new commissioner, Commissioner Elia, promises have been being lived up to. The data has been returned far sooner than we've ever seen it before. We don't have growth scores and some of the necessary EPPR information just yet, but they have lived up to the promise of returning data far more efficiently than it has been done in the past, and releasing more of the questions that surround that data. And so I think if we're going to criticize, we also need to praise when it's due. And I doubt that the commissioner is watching, but might as well to share. Thank you, Dr. Sansucci, for driving. So the first slide that we have here is just a brief summary of our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade ELA assessment results for this year, and also giving you some information. You can see where we fell in terms of our proficiency percentages across the district in each of those grades, our state ranking, and how we compared to the state proficiency rates for those 3 grade levels. And then also down below, you see 2 tables that show our ranking within our 10 component schools of Monroe 1 BOCES in terms of proficiency on the left and mastery on the right. We remain very, very competitive. And when you look at these, you look at rankings, I mean, we're looking at whole numbers. When you're looking at the percentages, that I can see in the background that are provided to us, we're splitting hairs. We're talking percentage points here and there between the top 3 and 4 schools before you start to see any separation. So it's really, when you talk about maybe 300 kids in a class, you're only talking about a few students here or there, and there's some other factors that continue to juggle into this. But these are results that I feel we can be proud of. You'll see more of the trend data when I have the full comprehensive instructional data summary report for you in October. But I can summarize for you that our ELA 3 is up from 52% proficiency last year, and from 70th place. ELA 4 is up from 64% proficiency, and ELA 5 is up from 60% proficiency, and our 3 grade level average is up from 59% proficiency. So we've made some nice gains there, as much as we can put into the data in that regard. I think it's also important to note, and maybe of interest, refusals. We were average about 17% refusal rate across the 3 grades. So that was better than last year. Last year we were closer to 25-30%, and we were down, across those 3 grades at the elementary level. So, we'll be digging in a little bit closer when we get a chance and really analyze by standard, and then comparing that information back to where it lives in our curriculum and moving forward in that regard. But these are the preliminary look. Next is math. And you can see we continue to do very, very well when compared to the state. Again, we will see that some of our percentages have dipped a little bit compared to last year. We're down from 74% in 3rd grade, from 88% in 4th grade, and 87% in 5th grade, but still very, very strong compared to New York State. And I think there's a number of things that could have played into other districts and the state catching up to us, and I'll touch on those when I get to our next step slide a little bit. In terms of refusal, and again, comparatively, when you look how we did to our component districts, they're still very, very strong, in the top 3 across the board for all 3 grades. So again, we're splitting some hairs there in terms of 1 or 2 percentage points, but and while these don't certainly reflect all of our program, it is nice to see. It is one measure that we do look at, and we do want to see how we compare to our component districts. So results to be proud of, but some work to do. Refusal rates for that, just quickly, right around the 19% mark. So again, down from closer to 25-30% last year, but about 19% refusal rate across the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade for the math assessment. Science, we showed some nice growth. We're up from about 96% in terms of overall proficiency, 3s and 4s. So we had some slight growth there. Our mastery was down a little bit from 81%, but not much. I like the overall proficiency to continue to grow there. And you can see that our ranking compared to our Monroe 1 components up from 3rd to 1st place. And again, this is only a 4th grade assessment that we're looking at here. So very positive results for science, and science is an interesting spot right now as we continue to wait for the approval of new science standards so that we can really begin to dig in and do some work around curriculum and get things updated. And that the science assessment has not really changed much, probably about 10 years. So, there's some work to be done there, but we're proud of these results as well. So what are we looking at? Key findings. Our comparative results compared to New York State are still very, very positive. We still outperform the state by far, and still do very well compared to our component districts. We will continue to align to the Common Core Learning Standards, and those efforts have shown growth. And especially look at our ELA results. We continue to move in the right direction and see increases in proficiency as we have worked on guaranteed and viable curriculum in that area. We still have a great RTI model, and we continue to focus on meeting student needs in that model, both those students who need remediation as well as those students who need more challenge, and we'll continue to do so. What's hard to put our finger on is the impact of those, approximately 20% of students who are not taking the test. What we haven't had a chance to do yet is look back and see, who are those kiddos in terms of their performance and other assessments that we give them that might predict for us how they might have done on this test, and that is a very inexact science, to say the least. So there's no guaranteeing that a student who has done well on some of our other measures would definitely do well on the state assessments. Other pieces that played into it, a new test vendor this year who was dealing with questions that were created by the prior test vendor. So, in the midst of things, we were working through, and the name of the company I can't believe is going to escape me at this point, but the prior test vendor who left New York State, Pearson, thank you. See, I wanted to forget them. I did. But Pearson, is no longer on the project, but they had done all the prior field testing, generated all the questions. These were corporately generated questions. New York State brought in a new vendor in Questar who was doing their best to be responsive to concerns from the state, from parents, and from us as districts, but they couldn't start all over again and create all new questions for an assessment that needed to be given, during the course of the last school year. So they worked with what they had. They looked to shorten the test in response to comments from the field, and then there was also unlimited time for the test this year. So while we didn't see a lot of students taking advantage of that unlimited time, there probably were some here, but I think that probably helped some other districts more so than it helped us. We know that New York City saw some pretty significant gains in their numbers, and what I've been reading is attributing it more to changes in the test than maybe some of the other things that their education department at New York City would like to lay that credit to. But we'll see. We'll continue to see as the test changed. I will say that I did sit in in on a session at DATAG, a data conference in Saratoga, where I got to meet with the Assistant Commissioner of Assessment, who has since left and now gone on to a position in another state. His name was Peter Sidversky, and they were very transparent, very open to hearing from the field, and they are working now, so the tests we'll see in 2017 will be, those questions and items are developed by teachers, by New York State teachers, and we'll continue to see, I think, improvements in efficiency and the quality of the assessments, and I think that will then lend us to having higher quality data that we can better use for instruction in the future. So our opportunities for growth, and this I'm sure is starting to look familiar to you, but as you've kept our goals the same, we're keeping our efforts the same because we believe it's the right way to go. We will continue to work and ensure that we have guaranteed and viable curricula K-5 in all subject areas. We've been there pretty close in math for the past couple of years. We continue to refine it to ensure that we're on target and focus on the essential skills that our kiddos need to move forward and be successful, especially getting to that algebra exam, that gatekeeper to graduation. We've made great gains in the area of ELA and humanities and social studies over the course of the last year, but there still is much work to be done that continued this summer and will continue through the course of this school year. But again, we'll be focusing on essential skills that we believe will transcend any changes in standards as well as changes in assessments, and really working on developing our students as good readers, writers, thinkers, scientists, and mathematicians, so that they can tackle the assessments that come their way and we don't have to worry about drastic fluctuations. We'll continue to develop our system of assessments. We've heard from our teachers. We continue to hear, and take responsiveness from our parents and be responsive to our parents around the amount of assessment that we have in the district and what we're doing with that data, and becoming more efficient with our assessment systems at the classroom level and at the district level, at the school level. So we've continued to refine that, and we will continue to do so. And as always, focusing on using the most effective instructional strategy in the classroom. The best intervention that we can provide our students is good first instruction. We have excellent teachers, and we want to continue to ensure that they're able to implement the best practices possible for that good first instruction. And so that's what we're going to do. Our actions are going to be to continue to develop that guaranteed and viable curriculum. We'll continue to develop our assessments, refine our assessment practices so that they're infused in our instruction and give us great data to move forward. And we will continue to ensure that our teachers have the best tools at their disposal for good first instruction, and do that through professional development. Probably next month or so, I hope to have a revised professional development plan in front of the board to meet the changing requirements per New York State, so that'll be coming your way as well. So that's 3 through 5. Are there any questions about the 3rd through 5th grade assessments?
Questions? Lisa?
When would we now get individual results, right? Because this is just group.
Yes, this
And
is
then
group results.
Will we get those sooner, and then will that help drive some of those RTI groupings and stuff like that?
Absolutely. And again, this is one data point. There are actually, Dr. Putnam and I just received a memo today about changes and requirements to AIS considerations, academic intervention services, based on state assessment results. I will be working with my team and then with Dr. Putnam we're going to be required to develop a policy around AIS, and I'll have to get the policy committee. And it starts with certain cut scores that are between a level 2 and a level 3 that will require us to then consider a student who scored below that cut point for AIS and have a uniform process. And we've got the process in place. We just don't have it documented in terms of a policy, so we'll get there. But it will help us lend itself to helping us make those decisions. But again, we haven't relied for a number of years solely on state test scores for determining AIS services. And it's also important to remember that those services are a continuum, just like in special education. Sometimes it's just progress monitoring, and sometimes that tier 3 service is very, very intense in a small group. But that's really based on the whole data set, everything we know about that kiddo, not just their state test score. From the parents' perspective, if they're interested, we should have these individual scores loaded up in Infinite Campus, hopefully by the end of the week, and available to parents next week in IC. And then at the beginning of the school year, we'll send home those individual student reports that we get from the state that give the parent more information, in particular about what that performance level means. And some of that information is already, what I have available is already linked up on our district website under the instruction page in the assessment tab. So there's some information up there.
Carol?
Are the results only available on Infinite Campus, or do we still mail them the way we used to?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
The results of the exams, are they only available on Infinite Campus, or do we still mail them to parents?
No, we send that individual score report home We get a report, a pre-printed PDF document from the state that has the score, their scale score, their performance level, and then what does that mean and what are some good next steps to help the child. We'll send that home with the kids instead of mailing them home. At the middle school level, we typically put them in the mail, but at the elementary level, we'll send them home with the kiddos at the beginning of the year. The buildings need some time to print them. They're all color, otherwise if you print them black and white, it loses a bit. So we'll take some time to do that.
The
and
score
send them home.
alone isn't very helpful.
Yeah.
It's the document that comes from the state that Jim's referencing around the specifics of what that actually means. So it'll be in that take-home folder for our elementary
Early on.
kiddos.
I won't say first week, but very early on, definitely the
Okay.
first week or two.
All right, thank you.
Yep. So then we will move on to our 6th through 8 assessment results. Again, we'll start with ELA in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Again, we've seen some gains here in 6th grade ELA, up from 55% the year before, and a ranking of 45th in the state. So a nice jump in 6th grade ELA. ELA 7 and ELA 8 were both flat. Our percentages remained the same, but then, with the uptick we had in 6th grade, our overall average over the 3 years is up a little bit, and still, in some cases, we're quite a ways ahead of the rest of the state average anyway, in terms of our performance. And again, still pretty strong and steady in terms of our ranking within Monroe 1 and our component districts. Proficiency, again, a nice uptick in terms of ELA 6, holding pretty steady at 7 and 8, but our mastery numbers and our rankings up a little bit in ELA 6 and ELA 8, and a little bit of a dip at ELA 7. Our refusal numbers were much higher at the middle school level. We were at 28% for ELA 6, 37% for ELA 7, and 40% for ELA 8. And a lot of this, we're starting to judge, how much of this is a social piece. We saw the numbers tick up a little bit, going in as kind of we got closer to the assessments, and we know there's a social media aspect to it, and still some concerns around the assessments themselves and the connection to APPR, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So it's really tough to tell what we have there in terms of the impact of those refusals. But still a lot to be proud of, but some work to be done. And in math, you can see, again, Math 7 dropped off a little bit from 74% the year before, and 44%, Math 6 was flat, and Math 7 dropped off a little bit from 74%. Math 8 is a really, really tricky one because we have about 111 students who took the Algebra Regents exam. So they would not take, because of the double testing waiver, they wouldn't take the Math 8 exam. Yet we had 121 students who refused to take the Math 8 exam. So when you take out those 111 who took algebra, that knocks us down to about 250 eligible kids. And when 120 of them don't take the test, now we're at about a 48% refusal rate there. And we know our high-performing kids, most of them were taking the algebra exam. So that one stings a bit, but we're not going to make kids take 2 tests for that regard, certainly. So, but again, our comparatively holding strong compared to our component districts. So again, 7th grade, we had that little bit of a dip there in terms of mastery, but we'll take a look at it and see how we can continue to refine the curriculum to ensure that we're ready to go. But with the changes in the assessments and the changes in vendors, it's tough to put. We're not going to put a ton into it and chase our tails too much. We know, again, when we move to the next slide, we'll talk about science. When we talk about those steps that we're taking, we're going to stay that course until things level off and we can get some more reliable data. Science 8. Remember that we do also have a number of students who take the living environment exam, and just a quick note, you saw me scrambling there to hide some slides because when I did this last year, the Regents results had been released from embargo because it was so much later in the year, and while I have the Regents results, they are still embargoed, so I can't share them publicly, but I had updated the slides because they used the same presentation from the year before, and I update everything, and then I remembered that they were embargoed before I left my office today and had to hide them before we started today. Pretty happy with those results, but I can't share you with what they are. But we do have a number of students who take living environment and then therefore don't take the Science 8 exam. However, we still continue to do quite well in terms of Science 8. But when we take, some other districts do have their students take both the science and the living environment or the earth science exam. We don't. And when our best students are taking a Regents exam instead, sometimes that's going to impact our ranking with our component districts. But overall, you can see that 90% of those kiddos are doing quite well in Science 8 in terms of reaching proficiency. So, and that's up. Our proficiency is up from 84% the year before, and mastery was about flat. So, good trends, and you'll see a full three-year trend with all of this in the full instructional data summary. So,
Jim,
Jerry,
I don't want to interrupt, and I might have missed it, but when you take a look at those scores, you did a great job with the math piece and science. A lot of those kids are pulled to take living environment.
Yes.
And I apologize if you
Yep.
said that, so
Yep.
I was too busy laughing at the embargoed pulling out the slide at the last minute, but I think that's
Yeah.
always, same thing with math, so
Yeah,
thank
it's a
you.
big piece. And so our key findings, again, our comparative results positive. Our efforts to align to the standards, again, as we continue to work through, and Nicole Whitehead mentioned the UBD format for the board's information, the public's information. That's an understanding by design format. It's a backwards design of curriculum work. We look at where do we want our kids to be, and then we design the curriculum backwards from there to meet those goals. And it really, again, focuses on enduring understandings, on what we refer to as transfer goals and skills, things that we want that are true throughout a child's course of study in a particular area, and that we believe are important for students not just to pass a Regents exam and graduate, but for their lives and careers beyond the walls of Penfield. And while we've been really working as new courses come online, as new standards change, that's the format we're using to develop the curricula to align to those courses, to really develop those thinking skills in our students moving forward. The math waiver, as Dr. Putnam just mentioned, continues to impact our results in grade 8, as does the science waiver for grade 8 science. And again, there's one where we can certainly see the impact of refusals. When so many of our high-performing kids, we don't make them take that test, so it's not the refusal piece, but then you take out 48% of students who are eligible, it's going to impact our rates. So tough to know who those kiddos are, but we're there. So we'll continue to work toward guaranteed and valuable curriculum in 6 through 8, all content areas. We need to continue to refine our assessment system. We're continuing to gather good data, but what does it look like and how are we using it to provide those interventions that we know we need to make sure our kids are ready to take those assessments and be successful for the future courses. And our teachers are always, again, looking for opportunities to improve their instructional impact and provide that great first instruction. And so when you look forward to actions, those are the things we're going to continue to work on. We're going to stay that course and continue to develop our abilities in that regard. The teachers have done a great job. People will often say, well, it's summer, you can kind of take it easy and lay back. It's not just us. District office team, teachers are in writing curriculum. We'll give you a report later on in the year about how much activity again went on during the summer. But a lot of work. This was a very busy place over the course of the summer. While we haven't been able to use this data to drive some of that work, we weren't waiting for it. We knew there were areas we need to improve, and then this will help us through the course of the year make those fine-tuning adjustments moving forward. Questions about the 6 through 8 assessment results?
Questions? Camille?
I want to talk a little bit more of your opinion about what's going on with refusal rates. And I know that you said right up front, it's not an exact science, and it's really hard to figure out who the populations are. And there are two different things happening. On the elementary school, it's more parent-driven, and it declined. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if you have a sense if that is going to sort of plateau, if there's always going to be a hardcore refusal group, or is it, you have a sense that it might decline? And then at the middle school level, I think what we're hearing is it's a little bit more of a peer pressure. They're in middle school and they now find out they have a choice. And that's that age, they want to express themselves in different ways, and this is one way to do it. So that one, maybe, I'm wondering if there's some things proactively we can do, maybe Mr. Buddington addressing parents at the beginning of the year. Like, it's a big enough issue that to not talk about it, I think it's not gonna go away. But I just wonder if there's something, if the parents and the students understood the impact of it, or if we talked about it a little bit more, if you could nip that in the bud, because that one seems a little bit more if social media is being used, it could be even bigger because middle school kids, you know.
And I think it's harder for the parents at the middle school level to say no. At the elementary level, it's a little bit easier to say, no, you're going to go do that. And some of your friends might not be doing it, and but you're going to. At the middle school level, that conversation gets a little harder and maybe a little more heated for parents. I'm not there yet, but it's coming too soon. But I think there's definitely more of a social piece in there. I think, too, as we continue to see the efforts of the state education department to refine the assessments, to look to continue to make them shorter. Again, they did cut minimal changes in terms of length this year, but to keep the fidelity of the assessment, to keep it meaningful, they couldn't just hack it away. I think now as we see a new vendor, and what I heard at the presentation this summer was they understand they need to make the assessment more efficient, and that means a shorter test. My hope, and I don't know that it'll happen, but right now these tests don't just measure like a Regents assessment does, say algebra, and just grade level algebra, right? And that's why we're able to score them so efficiently. But the 3 through 8 assessments really not only look to try to measure grade level, but what's above grade level and what's below grade level. And when you do that, when you have questions that are not just at grade level, but above and below, and you've got to measure everybody at grade level and all those standards, those tests become quite long. So my hope is that they'll really focus them more like a Regents exam and focus them on the grade level material and not try to figure out who's above and below, but just let us know where they are in terms of grade level. That will help make them far more efficient. And I think as the test becomes more efficient, takes up less instructional time, as we continue to see, as we'll talk about when we talk about APPR, a decoupling to teacher and principal evaluation. I mean, these are the things that the parent groups and many education groups were upset about. The tests were too long. The data took too long to get back. It wasn't useful for instruction. It was connected to teacher and principal evaluations. These are being addressed by the state education department. They are hearing the call and they are making adjustments. So I think what we might see is as those elementary kids where those rates have gone down trickle up to middle school, hopefully those rates will stay down and then even continue to decrease. You're not going to change an 8th grader now. It's what's going to happen in 7th grade. And hopefully the parents will say, you know what, no, that's not an issue anymore. And I think we can do that as a school district and look to say, hey, this is what has happened as a result of the concerns that you've raised. This is what's changed. We still believe it's an important measure, and it's continuing to get better. So. It's a double-edged sword though too, because we never want to poke the bear. We want people to hear the good, but not raise the ill about the stuff that still needs to be changed and increase those numbers. So.
As a reminder for the board, 2 years ago, we sent a letter from my office to all families around sort of the importance of taking the test. And from my point of view, I've always talked about it. While I will continue to advocate from the district level with the state about keeping the student test scores decoupled from teacher evaluation and principal evaluation. There's meaning in taking these assessments for the student and also for the teacher in the school district, because we really do use the data as one data point. This past year, we didn't send a letter. We had some talk about it, and if you take a look back, sort of the opt-out movement was much quieter in the media this year until about a week before the assessments, and then local media took articles and some news stories, and it really picked up. And it was sort of Jim's term of poking the bear. It was, at this point it was quiet, and we were, the assessments were not connected to teacher evaluation for this past year. So, it was very interesting. And the social experiment of middle school is a huge piece. I don't want to quote a number, but Mr. Buddington had shared that it was over 200 students who opted out the day of the assessment. They walked in with a letter on that day, whereas the elementary parents all, sort of gave us a heads up, and they were more aware. So it was really student driven. So I wrote down, I think, that point about what we can do proactively to talk with students about the other side of the coin on why sitting for the test is a relatively low stakes test in regards to the impact on your life, but a great experience to sit down and see how you do, because it really can't hurt, especially as long as it's decoupled from the teacher and principal evaluation, and that again it's only one data point we use. A low score on a state assessment doesn't mean you're going to your classes are going to look different the following year. It's one data point that we look at, so it's a great point.
Okay. And I think we all know, there's huge amounts of misinformation out there on social media that you'll never be able to compete against in that sense. So, okay, Jim, thanks.
Thank you. Quick recap, nice shot of our Leadership Summit from St. John Fisher College on July 26th and 27th this year. We had about 20 administrators on day one, and about 20 administrators and about 60 teacher leaders attend, along with several of our board members who were there on day two. We focused on revisiting our mission, our vision, and our goals as our compass for our decision-making and our efforts throughout the school year. We updated the administrators and teacher leaders regarding our progress on current initiatives and the fact that we're really not adding anything new and huge right now. We're continuing things that we've started over the last few years and really working to continue to ensure that we have some great implementation moving forward and we can ensure that those are viable. We talked with our administrative team about the concept of implementation science and really being judicious about taking on new things and a kind of a process and a format for decision making around new initiatives and how to implement them with fidelity, and I'm hopeful that we'll continue that work. We talked about the changes that you'll hear about to the APPR process, also to the continuing teacher leader education requirements as they've changed from New York State, and then majority of the second day, the building leadership team spent developing their building action plans or school action plans that you'll see in November again this year. And for two of our principals, it was really new principals at Cobbles with Dr. Steve Kenny and Indian Landing with Mrs. Marcy Ware. It was an opportunity for them to get to know their teachers and learn about their buildings and the progress that's been made in those buildings and making decisions to move forward. So I did issue a feedback survey. So we had about 80 responses or 80 attendees. I got 35 responses. So that's a 44% rate of return on a survey. Isn't bad. It's actually pretty good. You're usually doing all right if you get a third. I would have liked more, but an overall rating of 4.25 stars out of 5 for the whole day. And not that I'm taking credit for all of it, but certainly we had a lot of work from the entire team. Lynn Rainey helped out and planning it, and also the entire Office of Instruction team pitched in and helped me behind the scenes get things moving as well. So overall, I think people always appreciate the building time, that time with their building leadership team that's dedicated. It's a big chunk of time for them, whereas during the year, they get an hour here and there, and it's tough for them to accomplish a lot, so they really like that. A lot of positive feedback about the big picture overview and the progress updates on where we are with things and sharing that information out. And got some good feedback from the administrators about the implementation science work and moving forward. So it seemed like it was another success. We didn't get to see the Bills arrive for training camp this year as we usually do. There was some disappointment there, but it allowed us to stay a little bit more focused and stick to our schedules and agendas a little bit more without that distraction. So all in all, it was a good experience. So any questions about Summit? And thank you to the board members who were able to attend.
And thank you for including us. I think we all enjoy interacting with the staff. That's one of our goals as a board, and everybody was there bright and early, which was great.
Very good. Now we can get into the really exciting stuff. It's a good thing in terms of state aid, which always makes the business office happy, is that we did have a new APPR plan in alignment with the requirements of Education Law 3012D approved. We received our letter probably about 10 days, 2 weeks ago now. And so we have a plan that has been approved for school years 2016, beginning this year really in September and then ending in June of 2019. I'll review for you what that means in terms of our observations and student performance ratings. It's a little bit different than the current system. I did give you an overview back in, I think it was early June, maybe it was May even, of what the pending changes were, but we hadn't drafted a plan yet. And then there is something called an independent evaluator waiver out there, and I'll talk a little bit about what the independent evaluator piece is as we go through. So what will our tenured teachers experience this year? For our tenured teachers, it's not hugely different in that tenured teachers will still get one announced observation and one unannounced observation. According to the approved plan, the announced observation will be conducted by their building administrator. So at the elementary level, that'll be their building principal. At the secondary level, it could be the principal or the assistant principal, house principal. That will account for, thank you, sir, about 90% of their overall observation rating, and it should last about 40 minutes. The plan is that they would then also receive one unannounced observation, and according to 3012D, this would have to be conducted by an administrator or someone approved to do evaluations from a different beds code, so someone from outside the building. That means either swapping principals and assistant principals and using the directors to conduct those observations. What we decided on is that we would focus that very short observation of about 10 minutes on one component from Danielson. That would be component 2D, which deals with managing student behavior. Through my efforts this year, and Tom and I's walks through the building, it was in about 300 classrooms, and I felt very confident and comfortable with our teachers' ability to manage student behavior, even in some challenging situations. And so that would be the focus of the unannounced observation, and that would count for 10% of a teacher's overall rating in the new system. There is some flexibility in the law that those ranges could be as little as 80% for the building principal and as high as 20% for the unannounced. We wanted to keep most of this observation piece in the hands of the building principal. And so that was the work, the TERT team, the teacher evaluation review team, which consisted of members of the PEA as well as the administrative team, worked really, really hard to come together with a plan that we felt was workable, but also still met the letter of the law, but would hopefully provide some meaning to the process as well. For our probationary teachers, remember that the probationary period for newly hired teachers has been extended. And so what we did was they would get, I'm sorry, I didn't flip my notes. They would get 2 unannounced observations and 1 unannounced observation, everything else remaining the same. That would be for their first 3 years. And then in year 4 of their probationary period, we would move them over to that tenured process. So we would cut back a little bit on that number of assessments during that 4th year. But everything else you would see remaining the same. So that's the number of observations that our teachers will have moving forward. We've shifted the meetings around a little bit. We used to have a goal-setting meeting. Then there would be potentially a pre- and post-observation meeting. There would be a mid-year check-in meeting and a summative meeting under the 3012C plan. We've tried to reduce that a little bit. It's a lot of time for the teachers, a lot of time for the administrators. So now everybody will have a pre-observation meeting where they will talk about the components from Danielson that they're going to select and that will be observed, talk about the artifacts that will be evidence of those components, and review there's a pre-observation form that teachers fill out in our system, the OASIS system, that provides some information. And then after the announced observation, there would be a post-observation meeting where the administrator and the teacher will discuss the evidence and the practices that they saw, possibly discuss some ratings, talk about any artifacts, and then our principals will provide an overall rating to the teacher within 10 school days regarding that observation. Then we might need a summative meeting. Some of the pieces that the components to Danielson, especially in domains 1 and 4 that talk about professional learning or communication with families, things of that nature, they might not see those in time for the post-observation meeting, and so there may be a need to have a summative meeting closer to the end of the year to review the artifacts and evidence and provide a rating on those domain 4 items. And so that could be combined, so there might be 2 meetings or maybe 3 meetings, but it's still more efficient than the process we had finishing up this year. This is the observation rating scale, so the teachers have to be rated as highly effective, effective, developing, or ineffective. We shifted this scale a little bit, and the current scale that we had under 3012C, it was about a 3.75, I think, to get to the highly effective. We adjusted it a little bit and opened up those ranges a little bit, and I'll show you why we made that decision in just a second when we get to the student performance side. But this is the scale we'll be using, and this applies for our principals as well. We do still have some part of the APPR that's based on student performance data. According to the law, part of that has to be the growth scores that are provided by New York State for principals and our 4 through 8 ELA and math teachers. And all other teachers will continue to have the SLOs or student learning objectives that would be based on state tests if their course ends in a state test or other approved assessment, or we can use district-wide and team SLOs, which has been our effort to limit the number of assessments that we use for APPR purposes. Targets continue to need to reflect a year of growth for students when a teacher sets an SLO. However, one big change for 3012D was that the state determined the rating scale for SLOs. In the past system and under 3012C, each district could locally negotiate their own scale as long as there was opportunity for a teacher to earn any point 0 to 20. The state changed their mind on that as part of the law, not state ed, but the legislature and the governor, and they mandated this scale, which you have a bigger copy of in your packet. And really the big change was that effective range used to be the largest part of this scale in our locally negotiated version, and you can see that that shrunk drastically in the state mandated scale. And developing also was shrunk. Developing used to typically only be about 3 portions, but now it's a small area. So teachers need to be about 75% accurate in their predictions and students reaching their growth targets in order to reach that effective range in terms of an SLO. And this scale also applies to the state-provided growth score. So the state will still provide a score out of 20, and then that's lined up against this scale. That's an interesting and somewhat scary proposition, because how those scores are calculated has never been very transparent. And I shared with you, I think a couple of years ago, that Hillary Lincourt had tried to do some back mapping, and we found some interesting things. I'm hopeful that will, again, be one of the things that gets worked through. And so, did I inadvertently eliminate, I think I inadvertently eliminated a matrix from this slide, from the presentation. Both the observation scale and then the rating scale are put on a matrix that I don't think you have in there, and I'll send it to you in an email. But instead of it being points out of 100 like we have now, it's basically how did you do on observation, and where does that meet on how you did on student performance. And the state mandated, again, the law mandated an overall matrix that tells you then what your overall rating as a teacher or a principal. So that's a little bit interesting as well, but we're pretty confident with the system that we have that we'll be able to evaluate teachers in a fair way. Now, despite all of that, again, some praise to the state education department. They can't change the law. Only the legislature can change the law. The governor can change the law. But in recognizing some of the flaws of this system, the state education department has made some adjustments. And so what they've said is that while you do have to have a plan approved, and actually this date of September 1 has been pushed back a little bit, you do have to have a plan approved in order to get your state aid from the previous increase from the previous year. They are now looking to give some relief from the use of the state test scores and the growth scores. And so while we will have to calculate ratings using that data, and we do have to report them, we do have to report them to the state, and we do have to report them if parents ask for them, they won't count. They won't count for tenure determinations. They can't count for tenure determinations or improvement plans or anything else of that nature. They can only be used for advisory purposes internally. And so we have to create a transition score. We have to create a different overall score that doesn't use the 3 through 8 assessments as part of that data. So we still have to develop then what they call an alternate SLO to give us that student performance data. And then we report both of those scores to New York State and to the parents if they should ask, and so on and so forth. The other piece that, and only those transition scores would then count for evaluation purposes, improvement plan purposes, et cetera. We did submit a waiver for that independent evaluator requirement that will hopefully grant us, some reprieve from having to have our assistant principals and principals travel to other buildings to conduct evaluations. We haven't gotten any feedback on that yet, and I'm not sure what the timeline for that will be. I've reached out to a contact at State Ed, and hopefully we'll hear something back soon, because one of the duties I'm hoping to avoid, if I can, is assigning all of those alternate observations or independent evaluations. I'm going to have to give each administrator a building and a number of them that they'll have to go do, and I don't want to go through all that work if we're going to get the waiver and then not have to do it. Although if that's going to be the magic touch to get it done, then we'll see, and we'll get her done. So what we're going to be doing then is we'll do the observations as we've planned. Even if we get the waiver, it would just be then the building administrator, the assistant principal, house principal will then take over that independent evaluator role and do that unannounced as we've planned. We won't change anything else from there. But we will have an alternate SLO for our 4 through 8 teachers and our principals at all of our buildings. And that's going to be based on 4 Regents exams through the 2018-2019 school year. It'll be Algebra 1, it will be the U.S. History exam, Living Environment, and our English 11. So we'll set SLO targets for those 4 exams, and we're able to use those as a district-wide SLO for all of our teachers who would have normally have gotten a growth score or had to base their SLO on the 3 through 8 exams. And we've run some historical data on that, and we should fare well. It'll be a fair measure, and it really promotes Team Penfield. Our elementary teachers, they lay the foundation for our students to be successful later on. Our middle school teachers get them through and prepared for high school and performance on these exams, and then our high school teachers, get them right through to the finish line. So we think this is a nice way to shift some of that to a Team Penfield approach for evaluations for all of our teachers. Oh, here's our matrix. It was just later in the slide. I lost my slides were out of order from this. So this is the matrix I mentioned. So you see, we see how does a teacher perform on their SLO or their student performance data, and then we go across to where does that meet in terms of their observation rating, and that's their overall rating is where those two cross. It's the quick version. Yes, help us is right.
Board members, do you have any questions? Barb?
Our 4 elementary schools are anchored by one principal.
So our plan was that they would not be conducting independent evaluations in other buildings. Dr. Maloney, Dr. Buddington did step up to conduct independent evaluations across all 6 buildings because they have more staff. Quite frankly, that can hold down the fort while they're out. Obviously, we would want to set up plans so that we would never completely have administrators out. There are times when our elementary principals are out of their buildings, but we don't want to add to that when they don't have assistant principals. So our plan that was approved does not include them conducting independent evaluations. That would be split up, like I said, among Dr. Maloney, Mr. Buddington, their assistant principals and house principals, as well as the directors. And the SEAs, I should say, were in the mix for that as well. So we had about 15 administrators that would have been pitching in to really conduct, a lot of 250 or so independent evaluations that need to be done. And so we're hopeful that the waiver will come through. One of the conditions are that you can use as evidence for the waiver is potential impact on the management of a building and the safety and the environment of the building. And I've said from day one of my major concerns is mostly on our assistant principals being out of the building. They are the ones who are out there in the hallways, they're in the lunches, they're the day-to-day managers of the educational environment and what's going on. And to have them not be there, not be in our lunches, not be in our hallways, having their pulse on what's going on in the building, to me is not a good situation. In the short run, it would be okay, but in the long term, over time, it's going to impact the way we do business and the environment in our school. So that's one of 4. The other is a high number of teachers and principals. We've got a lot of teachers, but compared to the city of Rochester or city of New York City, that's a tough one. And then it was cost to implement. And not having enough trained staff, but I do think the potential impact on the environment is one that we can argue and hopefully be granted the waiver on, and hopefully we'll know soon.
Anyone else? Carol? No? This is an incredibly complex piece of information that, I think behind the scenes, the average parent doesn't see what happens here, and I don't think in the business world there's anything like this. We wouldn't end up producing anything in the business world if we had these type of evaluations. So I appreciate your time and effort in this, and we know it just changes. It's like an amoeba every year or so, but we appreciate the presentation.
Thank you. And again, the entire team, the TERT team, they did the work. They took time out of classrooms for teachers, time out of buildings for administrators. I can't thank that team enough for the open discussion and the hard work and the amount of time. And we met weekly starting last July, and then monthly once the school year started for full days up until December. And then we were able to pull back to half days and finish the plan. So a lot of dedication and effort on their part. So.
Okay.
Equally as riveting are the changes to the requirements for professional development for our teachers, principals, and teaching assistants. So this chart is a quick summary of how it impacts our teachers and our principals. Basically you have a couple types of certification. We have some folks who are permanently certified. I think most of us who are certificated here at this table have permanent certification, so it doesn't impact us quite as much. But our teachers who have a professional certification, they're going to be impacted by this. And a big piece of it is actually a reduction in the required number of hours. Up until now, teachers have been required to engage in 175, and principals, 175 hours of professional development every 5 years. The changes to continuing teacher leader education requirements, because professional development was far too simple, is that now they're required to do 100 hours every 5 years. Also, the state's going to be tracking this and really requiring the individual teachers and principals to track this a little bit more carefully by having them register in a system called the TEACH system, where their certification is maintained. Effective July 1, in the month of your birth, all permanently certified and professionally certified teachers have to go in and register in the TEACH system. And that sets the clock. That begins their 5 years. So a teacher or principal who is in year 4 would have been in year 4. Anything they've done to this point toward that 175 hours, now 100 hours, is out. But anything they've done since July 1 of this year will count, even if their birthday isn't until June of 2017. We can count it there. And what can count is still a little foggy. What will be counted, we're still trying to figure that out and continue to ask for guidance from the state. We've got a pretty good tracking system in place through My Learning Plan. We've been tracking since we implemented that electronic system. We maintain a lot of the records. We'll continue to do that so that we can help our teachers and principals out as much as possible. But there is going to be some requirement on their individual part to certify what they've engaged in and provide some evidence through the TEACH system that they have engaged in the necessary professional development. So we're still trying to figure a lot of this out, but this is a bit of a change. And it also impacts our teaching assistants. Our level 3 teaching assistants their required hours are going up. They used to only be required to complete 75 hours every 5 years. They now have to complete 100 hours as well. Everything else that I already shared with you stays the same. But again, what we can count for them and what will count, we're still kind of working our way through it. Part of the law that the professional development must be provided by an approved sponsor. BOCES is an approved sponsor. We will be an approved sponsor, so things that we do in-house will count. But we do a lot through Solution Tree, who provides a lot of our professional learning community professional development. They're going to be required to submit an application as well as a $600 fee to apply to be a sponsor. And then they are going to be required to provide New York State with information about who participated and completed their workshops and their conferences. So it's going to be interesting when you look at a company the size of Solution Tree or ASCD, who do massive national conferences. Are they going to play ball, and are we going to still be able to count that? And we'll still send our teachers to it, but it would be really a shame if that didn't count toward these hours for them. My hope is that things like that will be able to be counted, but we'll figure it out as we go along. Barb's been working diligently with her office on it. Lynn Rainey's been working on it from her end. So we've got all of us working to try and find out as much information as we can, and we're trying to relay it as quickly as we can to our teachers and keep them moving. Is there anything, Barb, you want to add?
No,
got it.
you covered it.
All right. And Barb down there just puts her head in her hands.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions in regard to the ongoing continuing education? It mirrors a lot of other professions in New York State. I'm surprised it's so close to a lot of other things, and a lot of those national organizations will probably have to apply, and the fee thing is always guaranteed by New York State when you're doing it. There's always a fee. So, questions at all? Okay.
No, just a thank you to Dr. Sansucci and Mr. Pfeiffer for their reports this evening. And that wraps up superintendent's reports for tonight.
Okay. We are now on page 3 of our agenda. Under board business, we have some facility changes. You've reviewed the above change orders, and as usual, they have been reviewed by our architect, project manager, and clerk of the works, and of course, Dr. Sansucci. Could I have a motion, a second, that the change orders as described above be approved?
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor? Thank you. We did have a lunch fund presentation. And if we could have a motion and a second that the lunch fund budget for the 2016-2017, as recommended by the Food Service Department, be approved.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. We also did see a slight increase in school lunch prices. And if I could have a motion and a second that the approval be given to the Food Service Department for prices of school meals as listed above for the 2016-2017 school year.
Second.
Questions? All those in favor? Thank you. Okay. We saw a lot of information in regard to refunding the bond resolution. We do know we have a large amount of debt that we're refinancing. We have a lot of information that we've heard tonight and presented in our packet. And this is what they call in Congress an omnibus motion, when you hear that term. So I'm going to read a few things, and then we'll have basically it's a resolution that we'll have at the end, but it's really a refunding bond resolution dated August 9th, authorizing the issuance of refunding bonds of the Penfield Central School District, New York, to be designated substantially as refunding serial bonds and providing for other matters in relation thereto, and hereby payment of the bonds to be refunded thereby. So as a result of that, we will have a resolution by the Board of Education that covers 14 articles as detailed by Dr. Sansucci and listed in your packet, which relate to the legal issues and the approval issues in regard to the refunding of the bonds thereof. So if I could have a motion and a second that this resolution be moved forward, and we will take a roll call in regard to that.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions in regard to that? We had a very comprehensive presentation. Okay, we'll need a roll call by the clerk.
Mrs. Benatti Chinsey. Mr. Elledge.
Aye.
Mrs. Babiars.
Aye.
Mrs. Rutan.
Aye.
Mrs. Nassa.
Aye.
Mrs. Dean.
Aye.
And Mr. Cooper.
Aye. Okay, so that passes. 7 in favor? Okay, thank you. We had a presentation also establishing the tax rates for 2016 and 2017 and funding of reserves. We have a final allocation that $2,071,599 is going to be assigned fund balance for reduction of taxes. $3,732,433 is retained as unassigned fund balance. $1 million will be transferred to debt service for prepayment of debt pursuant to our previous resolution in June. $800 from the EBLAR reserve to reflect the actual value of outstanding sick days as of June 30th, 2016, and $1,169,51 to fund the 2014 capital reserve. The books are closed and the audit completed. Adjustments may be made. If I could have a motion and a second that the above 2016-17 anticipated revenue budget be amended as described above, and the described transfers and adjustments be approved, and the school tax rate for 2016-2017 be calculated on a real property tax levy of $60,523,391.
So moved.
Any questions in regard to that or the rates? Okay, all those in favor? Thank you. As you all know, and the public knows too, we have an intermunicipal fuel agreement that allows the Monroe County Sheriff's Department to gas its patrol cars at our district pumps. The district is reimbursed for this gas by Monroe County through an intermunicipal agreement. The county is charged based on our cost of gas on state contract plus 10 cents a gallon surcharge. We entered this approximately 10 years ago. So whereas the County of Monroe has indicated a desire to extend the intermunicipal agreement with the Penfield Central School District, and whereas the Board of Education finds that there is a mutual benefit to such an arrangement, therefore it is resolved that the Superintendent of Schools is hereby authorized to extend the intermunicipal agreement with the County of Monroe for the provision of vehicular refueling by the county for September 1st, 2016 through August 31, 2017. Would anyone like to make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? Thank you. We did also have in our packet the committee, subcommittee on special education appointments for all of our schools in accordance with the Commissioner's Regulations, Part 200-3 for 2016-17. If I could have a motion and a second that this be approved?
So moved. Second.
Okay, we got that clear?
Yep,
All
I think
right.
so.
All those in favor? Thank you. We did note that there was a correction for the standard workday for appointed employees, and you have seen, you have in your packet and the packet that anyone received when they came in the room, noting the changes and the designations. So it's resolved that the Penfield Central School District hereby establishes the following standard work days for the appointed officials shown below, and will report the following day's work to the New York State and local employees retirement system. If I could have a motion to that effect.
Second.
Any questions in regard to that? All those in favor? Thank you. Okay, President's remarks. Hope everybody's having a great summer. We do have, when Jim was talking about Commissioner Elia, the Monroe County School Board Association Fall Law Conference will be featuring her again. So I think we sent that out to everybody. Did everybody get a copy of that flyer? So it will be a huge crowd. It may not have officially gone out. I tend to see things early, I'm sorry. But we do have a date, I think that
September 22nd, I believe.
September
I think it
22nd.
was all sent by email.
Was by email, probably by Sherry sent something out from the Monroe County School Board Association. So in order to save time and energy, if you could let Sharon know if you're interested in going. It was a great program last year. I think most of us were there. And the attorneys present get their continuing legal education for being there as well. So possibly anyone that we bring could get some CLE as well. So that's one thing I'd remind you of. We did also have published our various committees, basically Monroe County School Boards Association, New York State School Boards Association, and our local committees. So thank you all for volunteering. And we will have, the board did have their planning session, and at our next meeting, we'll have the format of that out, as we did last year, for the strategic plan, the activities, and who owns it, and we'll continually update that monthly, so that's in process. And thank you to those of you who volunteered to be involved with the Monroe County School Board Association. We have a great contingent from Penfield, particularly on the steering committee, executive committee, so I think we'll see a lot of change. Even though some of the battles seem to be behind us, there will be new battles ahead of us with our friends in the legislature. Any questions on any of that? Under new business, we did have the oath of office administered to the following individuals, and this is on file, and you can see that in there from Mr. Maloney on down. And we do have to do that officially. Yes?
It says that Marcia Barrett is the district clerk.
Oh, it does.
This
That's
is the oath of office was, she still was, so.
She was when we administered for the new year.
Yeah.
We just
We
did it.
just administered, John
thank you.
administered it to Sharon, and so we'll
So as
take care
part
of
of
that
our
next meeting.
reorganization, that has to happen
Oh.
on that behalf. So Marcia did get a month in there, but
Okay.
We didn't want to print it saying that Sharon had done it before she had actually done it. It's very.
You got a point there.
John?
yes.
Sorry, I just want to backtrack. I noticed that, again, this year we'll be rotating through to the various 8 or 9 organizations, parent volunteer organizations, sort of that's an umbrella term. They probably have some of the dates, so we need to get them, because sometimes what happens is we miss the initial, like, September meetings. So I don't know if maybe Sharon can
I've
reach
been
out to.
working on Bill.
Yeah,
You are,
we've
okay,
been-
great, thanks.
We have a tentative agenda, and we've reached out to everybody. well, at least is beginning in the early part of September, and we're still waiting for some responses.
Okay,
So
good. Thanks.
we will have that list out, and, as usual, we'll do our best to try and pick the meetings that work and talk about everything that's critical to everyone. So thank you. Okay. If there's no other business to come before us, I'd like a motion and a second that the meeting be adjourned at 8:55 PM.
So moved.
All those in favor? Thank you.